This is the fourth video in a series I'm doing on running the dispatcher's job and the tower jobs on my Transcon 4 layout. This particular video we're going to talk about operating Aurora Tower, and I'll be mentioning the dispatcher because you two work together so doggone much. Basically, you got three things to do here at Aurora Tower, which is sitting behind me. You become a mini dispatcher because your territory includes the yards in Chicago all the way out to West Aurora that we'll be taking a look at here in a minute. You also work the levers, the switches here at the interlocker board, and those operating sessions when we write orders, that also becomes your job. I think it'd be worthwhile to have the camera follow me around, and I'll point out the geographical areas so you'll understand where your territory is and where all the important points are. Right over here we see a short Burlington freight train, and he stopped at the home signal at West Aurora. If Chicago's behind him, that means he's an outbound train, and as I look down this main, he's on the right hand main, which is the correct main. But that's all the farther that you can clear that train to. Beyond that point, it belongs to the Burlington dispatcher. If I were on the crew of that train, I'd have been calling the dispatcher when I was coming through, let's say, Wills Junction, so I could get him to line me up on out for my trip west. Now, if the camera would follow me into the next room, I'll show you where your inbound territory starts. Here's another Burlington local stopped at the home signal at West Aurora on the inbound main. And notice if you look down that main, he's on the right hand, which is the correct track. This is where the dispatcher's territory stops and where yours begins. So that dispatcher has cleared him to West Aurora, which is correct. The train stopped and he's trying to give you a call to see if you'll let him through to go into Chicago. Now, if you follow me back, I'll point out some of the more important geographical areas. This track nearest to you that kind of curves off goes into the Rochelle staging yards. This is your area to dispatch. This home signal is called Three Forks, and there's the switch for Three Forks. So it's possible that when an outbound train from Rochelle calls you, you can tell them, well, first either stay put because you have a train coming out of Chicago that you need to put into Rochelle, or come on out to Three Forks and stop there and I'll see if I can get you out on the main. Or I guess your third option is, yeah, I can take you into Chicago and I'll get you all lined up. Three Forks. A point of confusion that I want to set straight. In real railroading, there could be two geographical locations for the same name. This is the building Aurora Tower. This is the geographical location on the railroad map for Aurora Tower. So if you clear that train, like you have apparently for the Milwaukee Road, to come down to Aurora Tower, that's where Aurora Tower is. These sets of crossover here is called the Austin Avenue crossovers. There's a little sign there that says Austin Avenue. And via these crossovers, you can get trains into Cicero Yard. You can get trains outbound from Chicago going down the right-hand main, which is the right main to be on. And finally, there's a little sign here that says 23rd Street, and that's the crossover, or that's the switch, rather, that you throw to get the commuter train into the commuter track. His first stop in that spur is Downers Grove. He makes a short stop, then he goes on down the spur to Aurora. After a slight pause, he reverses his movement and goes back into Chicago. The commuter train is your responsibility. The Burlington dispatcher doesn't want to know about it. It doesn't run on his territory. Now, if you would, follow me into Chicago, and we'll point out just a couple more places. This is coming through the wall into Chicago. Now remember that once a train comes into Chicago, they're under restricted speed. There's two possible tracks that you sent that train down. One is the lead track to Cicero Yard. The next track is the main line. So if that inbound train is going to Cicero Yard, here's the lead. If he's going to, let's say, Clearing Yard, Union Station, maybe 12th Street Coach Yard, you're going to have to send him down the main still. Now, swinging over here, here's the next important switch. This is Wills Junction. Here's the tower Wills Junction, but this switch is actually Wills Junction. That's why we have home signals here, to protect Wills Junction. From Wills Junction, you route mail train and passenger trains up the passenger main, or you route freight trains heading to Clearing Yard down the freight main. And there's signs here if you get confused. It's also written on the interlocker board. And I see right over here the Jacobs Yard job apparently stopped at the home signal, probably wants permission to go past the signal to set the cars out to switch into the RPO facility. On the freight main, here's a Santa Fe caboose hop, and it's waiting for permission for its trip west. Let's just recap the three possible routes that an inbound train has that you're going to have to learn. One is up the passenger main if it's a mail or a passenger train. If it's a freight train, here at Wills Junction, you throw the switch for any freights going to Clearing Yard. So that's two possible inbound routes. Let's go back into the other room and I'll point out the third possible inbound route. Here's your Milwaukee train. Let's pretend it's a Burlington train though. It's a Burlington freight train, which means it wants to go into its own yard, Cicero Yard. Use the Austin Street crossover to come in this nearest track here. So those are your three inbound possible routes. You have several outbound routes that you're going to have to figure out too. Let's take them one at a time. Here at 23rd Street, commuter trains coming outbound, you're going to throw that switch at 23rd Street onto the commuter spur. That's one. Trains, let's say a passenger train or a mail train or a freight train coming out the main line of Chicago, you're going to want to route them westbound, so you got to cross them over here at Austin Avenue also onto this nearest track because you want them on the right-hand main. Depending on where they're going, if they're going the Burlington route, set this switch for straight rail and continue on down the Burlington. And remember, your authority ends there at West Aurora. If they're going into the staging yard, you need to throw the switch here at Three Forks. The fourth possible route coming out of Chicago, if we swing the camera back around to that opening, the track on the left is the lead coming out of Cicero Yard. That's going to be Burlington freight trains coming out of there. Just keep them on straight rail and you'll run right into the right-hand main. So you got trains bearing down on you now. You're sitting here scratching your head wondering, what am I going to do? Well, I have a diagram here, a map, if you get really confused. It's sitting here right on the ledge. There's also a pretty detailed map of all of Chicago, including your territory. And remember, you've always got the writing here on the interlocker board. Come early to the operating session, sit here, look things over, match up the schematic with the track plan itself, test the switches out. Let's talk about being a lever man next. In the old days, they had the big levers that you had to get behind and throw, and I tell you what, I just couldn't do it. They seem to be able to do it. We don't have to throw the levers, but you do have to flip a toggle switch. Now I use Atlas snap switches here, which means they only take a millisecond of power. That's all they need. If you hold this toggle over, you'll burn the motor out. So all you got to do, after you figure out what switch to throw, simply take your finger, snap it over like that, and it works the other way. If you snap it to the right, you're lining that switch up for straight rail. If you snap it to the left, you're bending the rail. Once you've thrown your turnouts, or you think you've thrown them right, go check them, because even I mess up on this too. The third job that you're going to have, if we do it for that particular operating session, will be to writing orders. And this is my version of the Form 19. We're not going to demo how to do it on this video because I've given you an example form and you can just copy off of that. Just know that the only trains that get an order will be any train proceeding westbound down to West Aurora on the Burlington Main. So any train going to Rochelle Staging, no orders. Any commuter train, no orders. All right, I want you to get ready and expect trains from your outbound side. You'll be giving the warrants to those trains calling from Chicago that are sitting in a yard wanting to get out of town. You're the one. Expect a call from inbound trains that are coming up on West Aurora on the inbound side. You'll be giving the track warrants that go past into Chicago. Just keep track in your mind anything coming out of Chicago and what's going into Chicago, because all of Chicago is single main line. We have a little OS sign here, which means on station. And that's the responsibility of the train crew. They're to OS the dispatcher. I've told the dispatchers if they don't OS to take the 2x4 and go knock them over the head. We have a master train list. It lists all the trains that's going, inbound trains going to be coming through your tower, and they'll be in that order. Pretty complicated. Get here early, take a look at it. Of course, I'm always around to answer any questions. This is kind of a fun job, though. You get to sit in a nice padded chair. You're near the coffee and treats. I'm trying to get to the point where I hope somebody likes it so much that they have it for their regular job. If you get to that point, let me know. Okay, see you in the next video.